Welcome to The Sleepy Voice, the podcast your sleep is waiting for. So find your favorite position, close your eyes, and let the sleepy voice lead you into sleep. Shh. Welcome, gentle dreamer. Tonight, under the soft rhythm of falling rain, you're invited to wander through a world where time slows, the stars hum lullabies, and the night itself wraps around you like a warm, sleepy cloud. Let go of today. Breathe in deeply and let your thoughts float far, far away, because this is the story of Jupiter and the bee, and it begins just as the rain begins to fall, far above the hills, beyond the whispering woods, and beneath a sky so wide it could hold every dream ever dreamed, walked Jupiter, a quiet soul with tired eyes and a heart that glowed faintly with old wonder. He walked slowly, not because he was in a hurry, but because he never was. Each step he took felt like part of a lullaby. The rain had just begun to fall, soft, hushed, a whisper from the sky. It wasn't the kind of rain that soaks your bones. It was gentler than a sigh. It kissed the treetops, slid down silver leaves, and tapped lightly on Jupiter's shoulders, like an old friend saying, "Rest now." And beside him, though she made no sound, drifted the tiniest of companions, a little bee with wings made of moonlight. She buzzed, not with energy, but with calm. Her glow pulsed gently with the rhythm of Jupiter's steps. No one knew where they were going, and that was the beauty of it. The journey didn't need a destination. The journey was sleep itself. They wandered past trees that hummed lullabies, their branches drooping like dreams ready to fall asleep. Underfoot, moss cushioned their steps, muffling even the sound of thoughts. Above, clouds hung low, like heavy cotton blankets, glowing with the reflected peace of the world below. In this forest, time didn't walk, it floated. They passed a stream that didn't flow, but shimmered, a ribbon of silver starlight that lazily curled through the land like a thought not yet finished. Jupiter knelt beside it and dipped his fingers in. It wasn't water, not quite. It was memory, and it felt cool and soothing, like a lullaby remembered from long ago. The bee circled him slowly, then drifted forward again, so he followed, into a grove of glowing mushrooms, through archways of vines that whispered things only dreams can understand, past sleepy foxes curled into balls and birds tucked into their feathers, past moonflowers that opened only to the sound of the rain, and finally they arrived at the center of the forest, a clearing lit only by the softest glow from a sky that had forgotten how to storm. In the middle stood a stone bench, carved by time itself, Jupiter sat, and the bee settled on his shoulder. The rain fell more gently now, a hush within a hush. His eyes fluttered. His breath slowed. The forest exhaled. The stars above didn't twinkle. They simply watched. And as the piano faded softly into silence and the bee's hum grew faint, Jupiter slipped into sleep, not with a thought, not with a word, but with a feeling, the kind of feeling that only comes when everything is still and safe and warm. The rain didn't begin with a storm. It arrived like a lullaby, drifting down from the sky in the softest, slowest hush. No lightning cracked, no thunder warned of its coming. Instead, it emerged like a dream, slipping into the edges of consciousness. Gentle, silvery drops, falling one by one, like the ticking of a sleepy clock. The forest stirred under its touch, not in alarm, but in surrender. Leaves turned their faces upward, catching the droplets with quiet gratitude. Moss swelled underfoot, plush and velvety, cradling every step in softness, and the world, which had been full of rustling and motion, slowly began to still. The first place the rain kissed was the canopy, high above the earth, where the old trees whispered to one another in creaking sighs. It landed on the leaves like the tiptoe of feathers, dripping down in slow, round beads that paused on every edge before giving way to gravity. Each drop made a sound not unlike a sigh, soft, brief, and barely there, like the murmur of a distant memory. Below, the forest floor welcomed it, not as a guest, but as something it had long waited for. The puddles that formed did so lazily, mirroring the gray-purple sky above, with perfect stillness. Jupiter walked through the rain without rushing, his long coat heavy with stories, his boots brushing quietly through the undergrowth. The rain fell over him like a veil, dimming the sharp lines of his form until he appeared more like a shadow in motion, a part of the landscape itself. Each droplet that landed on him seemed to steal away a tiny bit of tension, a little strand of the day's weight. He did not mind the damp. It felt more like a blessing than a burden. It washed over him with patient rhythm, coaxing his thoughts into a quieter pace, slowing his heart to match the rain's descent. Above him, the clouds were not dark and brooding, but soft and luminous, as though lit from within by some sleepy sun. They swirled in slow motion, their bellies heavy with dreams waiting to fall. The sound of the rain played like a long-forgotten tune, steady, delicate, familiar. It was a language without words, yet Jupiter understood it completely. It was saying, let go, let go, and so, with each step, he did. Even the creatures of the forest had surrendered to the rain. Small birds huddled beneath fern umbrellas, their eyes closed, heads tucked beneath wings. Squirrels curled into hollows, their chests rising and falling with measured peace. Somewhere nearby, a doe lay nestled in a bed of leaves, her breath fogging gently into the air as the drops danced across her back. It was as if the rain had whispered directly to them too. Sleep now. You are safe. The bee floated beside him, her tiny wings glistening with moisture, yet she flew unbothered, her movements slow and deliberate, as if even the air itself had thickened into something warm and cradling. Her soft glow pulsed in rhythm with the rain, a heartbeat of light in the mist. She buzzed not in erratic spirals, but in graceful curves, looping slowly around Jupiter's head, like a planet orbiting a star, and together they moved deeper into the heart of the dreaming woods. Jupiter paused beneath an old elm tree, its trunk wide enough to hold the echoes of centuries. The rain filtered down through the branches in thin silver threads, catching the air like the strings of an invisible harp. Each note it played was a droplet, each chord a soft splash on the ground below. He tilted his head back and closed his eyes, letting the rain find his face. It tickled down his cheeks, over his closed eyelids, and along the bridge of his nose. It was like being touched by stardust. The air around him was thick with petrichor, the sweet, earthy scent of water waking the soil. It curled up from the ground like incense, ancient and grounding, wrapping around him like a warm shawl. With every inhale, he breathed in peace, and with every exhale, he let go of another thought, worries about tomorrow, the clatter of tasks undone, the sharp edges of things said or left unsaid. All of them softened under the weight of the rain. They melted like mist, faded like breath on a window pane. And as he walked again, he noticed how even time seemed to respect the rain. Seconds stretched longer, minutes dissolved. There was no need to mark anything anymore. The rain had become the rhythm. Drip, pause, drip. A sacred tempo that called everything toward stillness. There was a kind of reverence in it, like the hush inside a cathedral just before a prayer. The world was not asleep exactly, but it was dreaming with open eyes. Somewhere in the distance, a stream began to murmur louder, as if it too had been stirred awake by the gentle touch of the storm. Its song joined the rains, creating a soft duet that wound through the trees like smoke. Jupiter followed it, not with urgency, but with quiet curiosity, as one might follow a remembered scent, or the sound of a lullaby sung from another room. The bee buzzed ahead, weaving between rain-heavy branches, leading him further inward, deeper into calm. They came upon a glade where the rain fell heavier, not harsh, but steady. Thick drops fell into a pond, sending circles across its surface like ripples of thought, spreading out and fading. Jupiter stood at the edge and watched them, the way one watches fire or the ocean, not for what it will do, but for what it undoes within you. He knelt, cupped his hands, and let the water fall into them. It was cool, perfect. He drank, and the rain seemed to hum approval. It had always been meant for him. He sat there for a long time, or maybe no time at all, while the bee nestled into the crook of his shoulder. The rain wrapped around them like a spell, softening the edges of everything. No more names, no more hours, just the rain and the forest, Jupiter and the bee, floating through the hush like leaves caught in a lazy current. And the rain kept falling, because that is what it was meant to do, because it knew, better than anyone, how to make the world feel like sleep. Jupiter walked not just through the forest, but through himself. With each gentle step across the mossy ground, a thought uncoiled from his mind and drifted silently into the air, like the steam that rose from puddles kissed by the rain. The path before him twisted and turned, not because it led anywhere in particular, but because the journey was not one of distance. It was a passage inward. The rain, like a patient companion, fell in rhythm with his breath, soft and even, guiding him gently through the stillness of forgetting. As he moved, the sounds of the world behind him softened, the rustling of old worries, the clatter of yesterday's memories, the sharpness of tasks yet unfinished, all seemed to fade, absorbed by the hush of the forest floor. Trees bowed toward him, heavy with rain, their trunks old and wise, as though they understood what he carried. Their branches arched above like cathedral ceilings, and every drop that fell from their leaves was like a whispered promise that rest was near, that peace was possible, that letting go was safe. Jupiter's cloak trailed behind him, damp and darkened by the mist, its hem brushing against the wildflowers that nodded drowsily in the wet air. The bee beside him fluttered quietly, not buzzing with urgency, but gliding like a dream. She didn't speak, but her presence offered a kind of assurance that words never could. She floated ahead whenever his pace slowed, circling back if his eyes lingered too long on something behind him. She led not with force, but with quiet hope, and he followed, not because he had to, but because it felt like the right thing to do. Each step forward became a ritual. With the press of his foot into the soft earth, Jupiter felt another memory ease from his chest. One by one, they loosened their grip. The time he forgot to say what he meant. The faces that faded too soon. The weight of what was never quite enough. All of them floated up and into the rain, dissolving like sugar into tea. The rain did not rush. It didn't wash them away harshly. It simply offered itself as a place for those thoughts to rest. And Jupiter, quietly, let them go. He remembered the day he first felt heavy. It wasn't a storm that brought it on, but a whisper. One of those quiet moments when the world feels too full and too empty all at once. That feeling had nestled into his shoulders, coiled into the space between his breaths, until every moment afterward had felt just a little more tiring than the last. But here, in the forest's cradle, with the rain as his lullaby, that weight began to untangle. Slowly, without resistance, the burden softened. His back straightened, not with effort, but with release. There was nothing to brace against anymore. The path took him through groves, lit only by the pale glow of mushrooms and the soft flicker of fireflies who danced lazily in the mist. Their light didn't pierce the darkness. It wrapped around it, warm and dim, like candlelight behind a curtain. The air smelled of damp bark and sleeping roots, of things ancient and content. He inhaled deeply, and each breath filled his chest, not with urgency, but with quiet, the kind of quiet that stretches through you like the last hour before dawn. The bee hovered near a hollow where the rain had gathered into a wide, shallow pool. Its surface shimmered like glass, undisturbed by wind or ripple. Jupiter knelt beside it and saw his reflection, not as he remembered it, not as the world saw it, but softened. The creases were still there, the lines earned from days and nights and too many thoughts, but they looked like riverbeds now, paths where the rain had run, not scars, but maps of movement. He touched the surface with his fingers and watched the image blur, as if the water was asking, gently, who he might become if he stopped holding on. Behind him, the trees continued their slow conversation in the rain. Leaves whispered to one another in a language older than speech. They spoke of patience, of seasons passing, of how even the strongest branches must one day bend. Jupiter listened without needing to understand. The meaning was in the tone, and the tone was sleep. He stood again, moving now with the slowness of someone not searching, but simply being. There was no need to hurry. No one waited for him, and that, too, was a comfort. His presence here was enough. The forest asked for nothing more. The path curved ahead, and he followed, deeper still into the green hush. A fox stirred nearby and stretched before curling again beneath the roots of an old oak. A pair of deer watched him from the shadows, their ears twitching before lowering again in trust. Even the stones seemed to sigh under his step. Thoughts still came, but now they came like clouds, drifting in, soft and formless, then dissolving again into the air. Jupiter didn't grasp at them anymore. He let them pass, watching each one with the same detachment as watching raindrops slide down a window pane. He didn't need to hold anything. Not now. The rain held him. The forest held him. Even the bee, tiny and glowing, seemed to carry some small part of his soul that no longer needed to be protected. They reached a small bridge, arched over a brook. The water beneath moved slow and deep, dark with reflection. Jupiter paused at its center, leaning against the worn wood of the railing. The rain played a steady rhythm on the surface of the stream, sending tiny rings across its calm face. He watched them until the circles overlapped, until the distinction between drop and ripple and stream blurred completely. There was no beginning here, no end, only movement, only now. When he moved on, he did so with the ease of someone floating. His feet still touched the ground, but they felt lighter. His chest still rose and fell, but the breaths were quieter. Even the beat of his heart felt slower, stretched out into a rhythm that matched the sky. The bee drifted beside him, a constant, glowing dot in the gentle rain. And as the forest deepened and the canopy closed tighter above him, Jupiter smiled, not for joy, not for relief, but for stillness, a smile that didn't need a reason, a smile made from the absence of tension. He walked deeper, not into darkness, but into calm, not into silence, but into peace. The rain had grown softer, like a whisper now, tapping gently against the leaves, high above, as if nature itself had grown sleepy too. Jupiter continued his path along the forest's winding trail, the gentle bee always just ahead, glowing faintly like a lantern in the dusk. Every step he took made a quiet squish against the damp earth, a hush that matched the steady rhythm of his breathing. Around him, the trees stood tall and still, their trunks damp and glistening, their roots wrapped in moss like old hands curled in rest. The world felt cocooned in hush, blanketed in a gentle stillness that seemed to deepen with every breath. There was something in the way the forest curved here, how the path sloped slightly downward and wrapped around large, ancient stones, that made it feel like he was entering a place held in memory, not built of earth and bark and rain, but something softer. The canopy above thickened, sheltering him from most of the rain now, but still letting tiny droplets slip through. Each one landed with a soft sound on his shoulders or nose, light as a sigh. The air was cooler here, fresh and wet and filled with the scent of fallen leaves and thyme. As he moved further in, the forest seemed to exhale. Jupiter felt that breath, felt the forest slowly release its tension, and in doing so, invited him to release his own. He paused beside a small pool where rain had gathered beneath an overhang of ferns. The surface was calm, catching the soft light of the bee and the scattered glimmers of the hidden sky. A frog blinked from the edge, unmoving, and nearby, a snail traced a lazy path across a leaf. The world was moving, but slowly, patiently, like it had all the time in the world. And in this space, Jupiter felt time loosen its grip on him too. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The rain, though barely audible now, became a lullaby in his ears. His thoughts floated by gently, no longer demanding attention. One passed by, a memory of a book he once read by candlelight, long ago, during a storm. Another, the scent of bread from a morning kitchen when he was young. These memories didn't ache. They didn't press. They simply drifted in and out, like clouds brushing across a full moon. He let them come and go without resistance. The bee returned to his side, hovering near his cheek for a moment, then gently moved forward again, tracing a path through low-hanging branches and dew-speckled leaves. Jupiter followed, feeling each movement of his legs as something deliberate and slow. There was no reason to hurry. The destination wasn't a place. It was a feeling, and it was growing closer. Deeper in the forest, a gentle stream began to murmur beside the trail. The sound was soft and rounded, like someone speaking kindly in a dream. Jupiter stepped from stone to stone, crossing the water where it shallowed, watching how the rain created small, silver rings on its surface. He followed the stream's winding shape, which led him into a grove of the willows, long sweeping branches drooping like curtains of green. The air here was warmer, stiller, and held a sweetness in it, the kind that feels like a memory even as you're breathing it in. He stepped beneath the willows, their leaves brushing his shoulders, tickling gently, like fingers pulling him into a softer world. The bee danced beneath the branches too, leaving behind the faintest shimmer in the air, almost as though she were drawing quiet symbols for him to follow. Jupiter smiled to himself, not out of amusement, but from that quiet happiness that comes when everything feels safe, when the world around you says, in every subtle way, that you don't need to try anymore. His legs brought him to a small hollow beneath one of the largest trees, where the roots reached out like arms. The moss here was thick and deep, almost like a nest made for dreaming. Jupiter sank down slowly, letting his back rest against the trunk. The bark was cool and slightly damp, but it welcomed him. He felt no tension in his spine, no pressure behind his eyes, only softness, only rest. The bee settled nearby on a petal, her wings folding. She didn't buzz. She didn't move, just the softest glow beside him, her light mingling with a faint shimmer of the rain still falling through gaps in the leaves. It was a lull, a moment suspended between waking and sleep, between presence and drift. And Jupiter, breathing steadily, allowed his body to melt into it. Above, the forest swayed gently in the breeze, and he could hear it, so faintly, like a hush, like a secret being told, not in words, but in rhythm. The forest was singing, not loudly, not in melody, but in tone and motion and repetition. The creak of branches, the whisper of ferns, the occasional tap of a droplet landing on a fallen log. Each sound was spaced perfectly, never too soon, never too late. A lullaby written by the world itself. Jupiter's eyes softened. He let them close for a moment, and when they opened again, the world had blurred just a little, not out of confusion, but because the need for sharpness had faded. Edges didn't matter here. Clarity wasn't important. Feeling was everything, and what he felt was a surrender so complete it could only come from trust. Trust in the rain, the bee, the earth. Trust that this stillness would hold him. He lay back completely now, the moss cradling him like a long-lost bed, soft and cool and welcoming. His hands rested loosely at his sides. His breaths came slower, deeper, until they were no longer even breaths, but the gentle rise and fall of sleep pulling near. The forest continued its lullaby. The rain kept time. The bee, ever quiet, watched over him like a guardian of dreams. And in the dim light beneath the willow branches, surrounded by the hush of rain and the soft rhythm of the earth's breathing, Jupiter began to drift, not in fear, not in escape, but in comfort, in warmth, in quiet. He did not resist the pull. He did not reach for thoughts or names or needs. He simply allowed himself to sink, to drift, to become part of the hush, part of the rain, part of the forest's ancient, gentle, sleeping song. Jupiter's gaze wandered upward as the forest canopy gave way to an open sky, a dome of gentle gray, washed in the softest shades of twilight. The rain had quieted to a mist, not quite falling, but floating, like the sky was breathing out, slowly, endlessly. Ahead, the little bee hovered still, waiting, her golden light pulsing in calm rhythm like a heart at rest. Jupiter stepped into a clearing where the light gathered like a secret, sheltered space carved out just for him. Here, the air felt warmer, as if it remembered the sun's embrace from earlier in the day, and held onto it just a little longer. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, wider than any Jupiter had seen before, its bark silvered by time and damp with rain. The roots spread outward like the arms of a sleeping giant, and nestled within them was a small, hollow nook, dimly glowing with soft reflections of light dancing across the wet bark. Jupiter approached slowly, his feet making almost no sound as they touched the soft, mossy ground. The world felt suspended here, like even time had chosen to lie down and close its eyes. He sat, then lay back against the root, cradled by its curve, like a storybook child in a fairy glen. The quiet here was unlike any other, not empty, but full of subtle things, invisible rhythms, soft breathings of the forest, and the memory of lullabies never sung aloud. The bee landed nearby, curling its wings and resting in silence. The glow she carried dimmed, not out of loss, but like a candle given permission to rest. And with that soft darkening, the clearing too seemed to sink deeper into calm, its edges folding in like pages of a dream. Jupiter let his hands rest gently over his stomach, feeling the rise and fall of each breath slow just a bit more. The air smelled of damp bark, like old library shelves and forgotten notebooks, and something sweet too, like night blooming flowers just beginning to open. The clouds above shifted so slowly that it was impossible to know whether they moved at all. They were simply there, blankets for the sky, hushes for the stars. The sound of the rain returned, but not from above. It was now the drip of branches, the patter of droplets collecting and falling from leaves, forming a rhythm soft enough to soothe even the oldest, most restless parts of his heart. He listened not with ears, but with his whole being. Each drop was a lull in thought. Each sound was a thread unraveling worry. The roots around him seemed to hum faintly, as if they were connected to something deep in the earth, and through them, Jupiter felt anchored, as though he belonged not just in this moment, but in the entire hush of the world. A sleepy wind curled through the clearing, lifting a single leaf into the air. He watched it dance and tumble, not quickly, not dramatically, just lightly enough to catch the breeze's rhythm. Then it came to rest on his chest, right over his heart, somewhere far away, So far it might have been in another lifetime. An owl called once, low and warm. It was not a cry of warning, but one of presence, of assurance. Jupiter imagined the owl perched high above, tucking its wings around itself, closing its eyes, breathing the same forest air. Everything in this place was resting. The trees, the wind, even the rain seemed to want sleep. Jupiter's thoughts became softer now, not silent, but dreamlike. A childhood memory surfaced. The feeling of being carried in his father's arms through the rain, head against a warm shoulder, the world rocking gently with each step. That same rhythm was here again, not in footsteps, but in the slow ebb and flow of sleep nearing. He didn't need to remember exactly when or how. The feeling was enough. That safe feeling, that warmth. His eyes closed for a long moment, and when they opened again, the bee was hovering above him, glowing once more, but dimly, like moonlight on old stone. She traced a small circle in the air, then another, slowly spiraling upward, and Jupiter's gaze followed. In the canopy above, droplets caught that faint light and shimmered like tiny stars drifting down from a quiet sky. The soft rhythm of the clearing deepened, and Jupiter felt as though the earth itself were breathing with him, through him, not in words, but in sensation. He could feel the soil beneath the roots, could feel the slow, deep pulse of the forest's dreaming. He imagined being a seed, curled in darkness, waiting patiently through a season of rain. No rush, no need to bloom just yet, just the comfort of being held. The trees whispered again, not in voices, but in the way their branches touched each other, in the way the leaves quivered ever so slightly. A hush between friends. Jupiter shifted a little, only to become more still. He realized his limbs had become heavy in the nicest way, not weighed down, but grounded. He felt wrapped in the moment, like a blanket of moss and mist had gently folded over him. The bee came to rest once more, this time at the base of the ancient tree, her light twinkling like the last ember of a fireplace after midnight. She needed no words. Her stillness was the message. Stay, rest, breathe. Jupiter's breath was now barely a sound, just the quiet movement of a soul exhaling its cares. The mist in the clearing thickened just enough to soften the trees, to blur the edges of sight until everything was shapes and shadows and light, as if the world itself were becoming a dream. Time dissolved completely, no night, no day, just rain, just breath, just stillness. Jupiter's thoughts became images, then feelings, then nothing at all. And in the hush, the forest cradled him, Jupiter had not noticed the light at first. It was gentle, shy almost, like the glow of a lantern hidden behind folds of mist. But as his eyes adjusted to the dim calm of the forest, he saw it again, a soft pulse of amber just beyond the clearing, hidden in the curls of a weeping willow that arched its limbs toward the ground like a mother's arms wrapping around a cradle. The light moved slowly, swaying like a lullaby played by candlelight. The bee, his ever gentle companion, stirred from her resting place and followed it without a sound. And Jupiter rose quietly, his legs slow and sleepy, as if even his steps wanted to stay wrapped in stillness. The willow's curtain of leaves brushed his shoulders like silk, cool and wet from the rain. He parted them gently and stepped through, finding himself in a place that felt untouched by time. The air was warmer here, still, sanctuary where the forest paused to dream. The ground beneath his feet was carpeted in moss, the color of pine, so thick it muffled even the softest of steps. And in the center of the grove, floating just above a bed of stones smoothed by years of rainfall, was the lantern. It wasn't an ordinary lantern. It looked as though it had been woven from strands of starlight and fireflies, its form round and delicate, like the belly of a whisper. The light it cast wasn't harsh or flickering, but calm, warm enough to feel like a memory, familiar in a way Jupiter couldn't quite place. The bee hovered near it and seemed to hum softly, a note that resonated in his chest like the quiet echo of a lullaby sung long ago. Jupiter sat beside the lantern, and the moment he did, he felt something shift, not around him, but within him, a loosening, a release. As if the weight of the day, the wandering, the dampness, the thoughts that had crept like ivy, was being unthreaded gently, one strand at a time. His shoulders sank, his hands fell open in his lap, and he breathed in deeply, letting the lantern's glow sink into his lungs like warm tea. The rain above had become a hush, the kind of drizzle that barely touches the leaves, but wraps the air in a soft shimmer. It made everything seem softer, the edges of the trees, the shape of his own thoughts. The lantern flickered once, not as if it were about to go out, but like it was exhaling too, sharing his breath, sinking with his stillness. Jupiter watched the way the light touched the stones, casting shadows that danced slowly, lazily, like drowsy spirits performing one last waltz before sleep. And then came a memory, not his own, or maybe it was. It didn't matter. It came like a feeling, rising from the lantern's glow. A child, sitting on the floor beside a fireplace, eyes heavy with sleep, a blanket wrapped around them, a soft voice reading from a book with worn pages. The child didn't listen to the words. Not really. They listened to the sound, the shape of the voice, the rhythm, the pauses between sentences where dreams could slip in unnoticed. That same rhythm now cradled Jupiter's thoughts. That same blanket, though invisible, seemed to wrap around him again. The lantern pulsed gently, as if in conversation with the rain, and Jupiter imagined the light had a voice too. If it spoke, it would say something like, "Rest now. You've come far enough." He leaned back, letting the moss support him, and looked up. The canopy was thin here, and the sky was a sheet of silver mist. No stars, no moon, just a smooth veil that felt like it had been draped lovingly over the night. The bee landed on his shoulder, so light he barely felt her, and yet he knew she was there. Her warmth, her glow, her quiet presence. She didn't hum now. She didn't need to. The lantern was doing all the speaking, and its language was made of peace. Jupiter felt his thoughts grow quieter, like a book with its last page turned but not closed yet, letting the ending linger in the hush. He watched the flickering light move across the stones, and one by one they seemed to transform, not in shape or color, but in meaning. Each stone became a place he had once loved or longed to return to. The hill near his childhood home, where he used to lie down and watch the clouds. The library with windows fogged by rain, where he had once read stories, alone but never lonely. The steps of a quiet cabin where he once sat beside someone he loved, sharing silence and nothing more. These memories, or dreams of memories, glowed faintly in the light of the lantern, each one a lullaby for the heart. A soft breeze stirred the willow leaves above, and they whispered to each other in the language only trees remember. Jupiter closed his eyes, and the darkness behind them was no longer empty. It was full of warmth, of glowing stones and drifting memories, and the silent presence of a light that asked for nothing, only offered rest. He no longer tried to stay awake. He no longer reached for thoughts. They drifted now, like paper boats in a slow-moving stream. The rain became music, the moss, a bed, the lantern, a heartbeat, and the night held him like it knew his name. As the soft rain continues to fall, and the lantern's gentle glow fades into the mist, let yourself sink deeper into the warmth of stillness. The story of Jupiter and the bee was never meant to be just words. It was a lullaby for your heart, a gentle invitation to rest. Let your thoughts wander like soft footsteps in the fog, with no need to arrive, only to drift. You are safe here. wrapped in the hush of night, with dreams waiting just beyond the next breath. There is no more to do, no more to think, only this quiet moment, this soft space, this gentle end. Let sleep take your hand now, as gently as a feather settling on water. Let the calm cradle you. Let your breathing slow, your muscles loosen, and your mind float free. You are already halfway to your dreams. The story may pause here, but the peace it brings remains with you. Sleep well, dear dreamer. The lantern will still be glowing the next time you return.